Yes. Very good morning, everyone. We are really delighted to have you all today. So, today I welcome you for our short and crisp, beautiful journal club on cerebral palsy. This is going to be a very short session. As a part of Rehab Dialogue Initiative, I'm going to moderate this session. And Dr. Hansala Sheikh is the presenter today. She is a good experienced physiotherapist, specialized in neurology, more specialized on neurology, and we are really happy to organize this webinar with Rehab Dialogue. So next slide, Ansala. So talking about our initiative, myself, I'm Dr. Alagappan. I'm a vast experienced physiotherapist with around close to 17 years. I've done my PhD. I've done all my masters and every credentials with education. And I'm also well experienced with clinical and academic practice. I publish, now I'm mostly onto research. And the presenter for the day, Dr. Hansala, is an assistant professor from Gujarat. She is well expertised in neurology. And the good thing about Hansala Sheikh is she is more towards research. She is with Pedro Reiter, and she is also with she is very keen on doing some good articles. And we are really delighted to have you all today. So, we also request you to join and follow us in all the social medias. There are so much good initiatives which is about to do from our platform. So I request you all physios to support us, join us all on all the good occasions like this. Over to you, Dr. Ansala.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for the warm introduction, and I thank all the participants to be here on this Sunday morning with us. Uh, Today's topic is evidence-based management and motor rehab of cerebral palsy. It's a systematic review by Sylvia Facolia et al. It was published in Frontiers in Neurology this May 2023. Okay, with that, I'll try to set the stage with a little background. As we all know, cerebral palsy is like a static lesion, right? There is some form of damage to the developing brain of the child. It can either be prenatally, or it can be just before birth, it can be during birth, or it can be after birth. But one thing for sure is that the lesion is static. Okay, but what happens, the conditions, the secondary symptoms of the lesion, like you can say deficits in muscle tone, there can be deficits in range of motion, muscle strength, muscle performance. The child can have secondary complications like some problems with hearing or eyesight. So all these things which are secondary are dynamic, and these can keep changing the picture of the child. That is what the clinical problem is. The lesion is static, but the symptomatology is dynamic and progressive, which keeps evolving over time. That is one prime feature which our rehabilitation should be addressing. If we talk about the global burden, so approximately 2 to 3 children per 1,000 live births globally are affected with cerebral palsy. So it's a justifiable burden to the society, to individual and families affected. Now, if we talk why this specific systematic review came in 2023, we all know there's a heap of literature on cerebral palsy, but then why this specific systemic review? So the thing is, we've seen that initially for cerebral palsy, the neuro approaches which were used were like NDT, Voita, Bobart. These all approaches were fixed on impairments, that if you reduce spasticity, there will gradually be less restriction in movement, and gradually the child will become more functionally oriented. But then in the last decade, research came, and research has proved that functional therapies like high dosage task specific therapies, CIMT, bimanual therapy, these are showing better results as compared to the previous neuro rehab approaches. So that is why the shift came, and this systematic review aimed to synthesize the highest level of evidence, that is systematic reviews and clinical practice guidelines, to provide a unanimous evidence-based management approach for motor rehabilitation in cerebral palsy. The key idea after this session that we aim is that you can go from thinking that what do we think works to what does the high quality, highest dose evidence prove which actually works. Talking about the aims and objectives of the systematic review, the first aim, the primary aim, is very simple. It just wanted to evaluate the effectiveness of motor rehabilitation interventions, yeah, for children and adolescents with cerebral palsy, focusing on the motor outcomes. The secondary objective, which is more impactful, wanted us to understand that which evidence based management strategies are effective and to what aspect. So, those are the objectives. Talking about the research question, the population for this specific systematic review is children and adolescents between the age of 2 to 18 years with all the levels of GMFCS. We all know gross motor functional classification system. Sorry, extremely sorry for the noise. So, children and adolescents 2 to 18 years with all levels of GMFCS were included. Interventions, they've checked all physiotherapeutic motor rehab approaches like CIMT, bimanual therapy, treadmill training. They've even seen passive techniques like stretching if they work. The comparator is conventional standard physiotherapy or no therapy or weightless controls or low intensity protocols. The outcomes, the three main outcomes are motor function, it includes gross motor and fine motor, it includes gait parameters, activity, and participation. So, the research question is they tried to see if high dose task specific motor rehabilitation compared to conventional or low dose therapy improves gross motor function. I think someone is joining, and okay, I'm not able to. Okay, fine. Yeah. So, with that research question, they had a very strong methodology, and let me explain the methodology. What they did, they tried to find the best quality of literature. Out of all that, they synthesized 4 clinical practice guidelines, 43 systematic reviews, and 3 primary studies. If we talk about the quality of these specific articles also, so the clinical practice guidelines were assessed using the agree to tool, and there were 3 CPGs which were very high quality. One is NICE, the next is NSW. There was one from Italy which was about a little low quality. About the systematic reviews, they used AMSTAR 2, and again using AMSTAR 2 they graded the evidence using the grade system. Now, one very important point over here that this systematic review says is that the grade evidence level for specific interventions was overall at low or very low. That is, this systematic review helps us to know what to give, but how to give that specific intervention is still not established by literature. So, this is one important point to note. And why that specific point, that how is not justified, because there was a great heterogeneity seen across the different studies, right? There was heterogeneity in aspect of dose and duration. कितना डोज देना है थेरेपी का, कितने टाइम देना है. Again, the participants they included were again across different GMFCS levels. Some were ambulant, some were non-ambulant. So that again caused one source of variability, and they used different outcome measures. Some studies used impairment-based outcome measures like muscle tone, muscle strength, etc. Whereas some focus on activity and participation using GMFM, PEDI, GMFCS levels. So this is the reason why there is a great heterogeneity and the grade level were a little low. Coming about ICF model, which is very crucial for rehabilitation, right? What I mean to explain with this is again the same thing, that initially the neuro rehab approaches were focused more on body function. That is, they intended spasticity come hogi, child will become more ambulant and more functional. So at that time, the outcomes were like muscle tone, strength, range of motion, all impairment based. But the present literature, which shows high effective therapies, this is not supported or changing any body function. So body function should not be the focus of today's rehabilitation in cerebral palsy. Today's rehab should be focused more towards activity and participation. Now, activities like walking, grasping, stair climbing, daily ADLs, drinking water, bathing, tying the shoelaces, these all can be checked by specific tools like GMFM, where we can see gross motor function in transitional modes. Manual ability classification system, we have 6-minute walk test. So these are all very primary focus tools for effective task oriented training. Again, the entire goal of rehabilitation of all us physiotherapists is that the child should become participant. participant of the society, home, and the environment where the child is, right? So participation is the ulterior ultimate goal, and outcomes can be like school play, participation, self-care, ADLs. We can assess it with tools like PEDI, that is pediatric evaluation of disability inventory, cerebral palsy quality of life tools. So this is the ultimate goal, improved by all successful activity level interventions. So this is one thing, that we have to rehabilitate the child's life, not just reduce spasticity in one muscle. So always try to integrate your assessment with the ICF model. With that background, let us again come to the results. The first question, the first query was to see which approaches are better, right? So this is non-negotiable. Rehabilitation के अंदर ये तीन चीज करनी ही है. You cannot negotiate on these points. The first is it should always be holistic and team-based care. We physiotherapists are, you can say, having a prime role in rehab of a child with cerebral palsy. But then again, as I already said, there are some dynamic problems with the child can have. Like you can say, the child needs to participate in the environment, fine motor activities chahiye. He needs an occupational therapist. If there is some problem in speech, there is the need of a SLP, speech language pathologist, right? If the child is having some hearing impairments, he needs an ENT. So the team of rehab should always be multidisciplinary, and if not possible, you can locate some tertiary institutes where these specialists can be located. The second, patient-centered approach. Initially, our approach to rehab was therapist-centered. Patient मेरे पास आया, मैंने देखा spasticity है. I tried to reduce the spasticity. Then I focused on, let's say, the sitting, and then some NDT-based rehabs and other things. But now you can say the focus has shifted from therapist-oriented care to patient-centered care, and more so to family-centered approach. So our management should be individualized according to the patient's assessment. Every child is different, and therefore some sort of our management should always be individualized, customized to that specific child we are treating. It should be goal focused. If there is no goal, no one will do anything actively, and if there is no active initiation, then there is no good neuroplasticity. So it should always be goal focused, and very importantly, it should be appropriate to the child's developmental age. तभी कोई difference मिलेगा. And now, how can we decide what is individualized goal focus? So for that, we need to have a word with the child or the family and caregivers. So then that is what this second point said. It should always be patient-centered or family-centered. And the third, as we already saw, we need to align with the ICF model, and we can use some functional classification systems. These are the four most common classification systems which are strongly recommended. First is gross motor function classification system. It describes based on the mobility level of the child. Then we have manual ability classification system. Manual ability classification system decides how well the child can do fine motor activities. The third is communication function, how well the child can participate in communication, both in sending information as well as receiving information. And then we have the visual classification system. So these are the three principles which are very important to establish in our rehab protocols. This is a pictorial diagram showing a multidisciplinary approach, where we can see there is some social care, nursing, speech language therapy, teaching support. Special education is very important for the child. Occupational therapy, physiotherapy, dietitians, voluntary organizations, pediatric neurology, psychology, orthopedics, child authorities, ophthalmologists, pediatric medicine experts, etc. And these all revolve around the child with cerebral palsy. Now, talking about the critical development ceiling, this is one major takeaway of the session. This is one of the most important takeaway of the session, according to me. Now, what is a ceiling effect? Ceiling is a point where, after multiple interventions also, that is a point after which the patient's function plateaus, right? So if we say this is a growing child is improving in his function till one point, there is no further improvement, it will be plateauing. So this is the developmental ceiling point, and we can affix this by two tools of functional classification. One is GMFCS, the second is MAX. So what this article says is, for all GMFCS levels, the plateau of gross motor skill is reached by 7 years of age. And after this point, we should be shifting from acquisition of one goal to improving the maintenance, efficiency, fitness, participation. That in simple language can mean कि 60 साल तक the child's gross motor ability, neuroplasticity is very good. So gross motor skills will keep on improving. But after 7 years of age, it will plateau. So whenever we have a child with cerebral palsy, if the child is beyond 7 years, below 7 years, we'll try to improve his skills. But if suppose the child is 7 or more than that, फिर we cannot say कि हमको GMFCS level 1 से 2 पे जाना है या 2 से 3 पे जाना है. जो स्टेज पे चाइल्ड है बस वही मेंटेन करना है, बिकॉज एक स्टेज से दूसरे स्टेज जाना विल बी वेरी डिफिकल्ट. The same stands true for max, that is manual ability. Bimanual performance shows stability by approximately 7 years till adolescence. So this is a critical period where you can try physiotherapy, occupational therapy, and skills for fine motor activities and ADL participation. The most important thing is the skill formation is time bound. So we need to have this developmental ceiling in our mind always, which I've not seen commonly being practiced in Indian physiotherapy for CP. This is an example. There are two children. One over here is Leo. Leo is 6 years old. And here we have Mia. Mia is 12 years old. So as we can say, if we talk about the goal focus, जो अभी मैंने बोला, 6 years means the child is below the ceiling effect. So there are chances for skill acquisition. So intensive focus can be on shifting the GMFCS level from 1 to 2. Rather, the child can be focused कि walker से चल रहा है अभी. Gradually, we can make the child walk with crutches or with some significant reduction in the assistance level. Why? Because here the child's brain neuroplasticity is still very high. So the child can, have improvements in his pattern, skill of movement, etc. Whereas if we talk of Mia, Mia has already crossed her ceiling level. She's 12 years old. Right? So the goal will not be an improvement in the GMFCS level or a transition from one level to another, but rather we can try whatever is a current walking pattern. If she's walking with a walker, let her walk with a walker, but we'll try to improve her gait efficiency, we'll try to improve her walking speed, endurance, muscle strength. Those can be the goals. Why? Because her motor pattern is stabilized and we cannot expect the GMFCS level to be transitioning from one to the next. So this is one very important takeaway from this specific systematic review. Now talking about the results. So if we start with upper limb, this is what high level evidence says. There are two main therapies for upper limb revolution. That is, one is CIMT, the second is bimanual therapy. These are very highly supported with literature. We all know CIMT kya hai. CIMT is the forced use of the more affected arm where we try to restrain the less affected arm. The aim or the physiological factor over here is more functional. If we see about structural changes, that muscle spasticity reduces or grip strength increases, ऐसा कुछ नहीं होता है. But the physiological mechanism is more functional and behavioral, and there are improvements seen in the unimanual capacity of movement as well as bimanual performance of the task. So this is the effectiveness of CIMT, which is proved by literature. The second is bimanual therapy. What is bimanual therapy? Active use of the arm, both hands, as we can see, and the arms are unrestrained. This works by improving motor planning, bilateral integration, interhemispheric communication, and thereby improving neuroplasticity and motor learning. And if bimanual therapy is given according to the same dosage as CIMT, it is equally effective like CIMT. So the takeaway for upper limb rehab can be that the most effective upper limb therapies do not work by fixing the underlying impairment. Here in both the examples, you can see that we are not trying to reduce muscle strength, we are not trying to improve range of motion, but what we can see is we are trying to improve the entire behavioral and functional mechanism of the child. So upper limb rehab is purely based on the skill acquisition model and not on any impairment based approaches. This was about upper limb rehab. Now talking about the other evidences, these are some about low level evidences as per the grade classification. Now here we have three things. First is gait training or treadmill training. This helps in improving the walking speed of the child. It improves the child's walking endurance and gross motor function. One meta-analysis also found that it improved the gait endurance, speed, limb support time, but it could not improve spatiotemporal parameters like the cadence or the step length. If we talk of strength training is advised when the child has weakness, which is a limiting factor to its function. Strength training has shown that it improves muscle strength, also gait speed. Again, the evidence is mixed and it is low to very low according to grade. Talking about complementary approaches, first is action observation therapy. We all know what action observation therapy is. For let's say 12 minutes, we can ask the child to visualize the function which is to be performed. You can either perform it, there can be a video clip which you are playing for the same movement to be performed, and then for the next 10-12 minutes you can ask the child to perform that task, breaking that task into specific formats. So that is action observation therapy. We are very familiar with virtual reality. Hydrotherapy, hippotherapy uses equine the horses, which are essential for promoting posture, movement control, core strength for the child. And these again are having low to very low evidence. Out of these four things, action observation therapy is suggested to be more effective, but again, it is not like a standalone therapy, but it is good when it is used with some other active form of rehabilitation. Now, talking about the dose response dilemma, how much dose should be given, right? So, there are three ingredients which are very essential for change. First, the activity should be active. Passive manipulation कर दिया, range of motion कर दी, child को passively. Even I've seen many people, they say they are practicing task oriented training. What they'll do, they'll make a child sit, child is spastic, or other, let's say the child does not even have neck control. They'll hold the child's neck like this, they'll hold the child's trunk entirely, and then they say they are doing task oriented training. So I really, it's very dilemmatic for me. So whenever we are having task oriented training, make the child participate actively. If you need to support, but only support to the extent that it is essential. Try active participation of the child. Second, make it goal directed. We already discussed family centered, patient centered approach, right? So, decide the goal of the child based on the developmental trajectory, and then you can start task oriented, task specific training for that specific goal. So, this is the holy trinity for effective rehabilitation of a cerebral palsy child. Now, there are 2 points: the non negotiable dose requirement, the minimal threshold. Achieving any functional goal, estimated hour of practice 14 to 24 hours minimum practice is important for achieving any specific goal. Now, this includes both face to face rehab with the therapist as well as home based rehab. If you want significant improvement in ability, then 30 to 40 hours of practice is very important. So, this is one thing that we need to know. Whatever way we are giving the therapy, this thing should always be satisfied. That is, for minimum functional change, we need 14 to 24 hours of practice, and for higher level, 30 to 40 hours of practice. Now, if we consider the age of the child, as we already discussed, let's consider 8 years. For a child who is older than 8 years, we can understand that thoda bahut cognition hoga. They may understand something. They may be able to formulate some goals. So at that point, that child will have some sort of motivation. So then this minimum threshold will also be able to activate a good amount of change. But for a child less than 8 years, we can do block practice of 30 to 40 hours where neuroplasticity is still active and it is still very high. So in that case, we can say higher level of changes in that child. So the clinical implication that standard low dose weekly therapies like 1 hour per week, 2 hours per week, 3 hours per week, that is very ineffective for any good skill acquisition for the child. So we need to improve the dosimetry. This is the same example I told you, that for individual functional goals, the lower dose, the minimal dose should be approximately 14 to 24 hours. And the same thing, that children over 8 years are 1.46 times more likely to succeed because they are able to, introspect and self-direct according to the goal-directed activities. Whereas if we talk of the general motor ability, higher dose is essential. And children under 8 years, they have greater neuroplasticity and responsiveness. So they may be able to achieve this level faster and in a good way as compared to the other one. The evidence graveyard, right? Critiquing common practices. We as physiotherapists in this age need to start critiquing what is traditional, what is evidence, and based on evidence, you can decide good rehab protocols for your patients. First thing, the myth of isolative passive stretching. Passive stretching is a myth. There may be some temporary changes. ऐसा लगेगा कि थोड़ा ज़्यादा comfort लग रहा है. There may be some, short-term compliance is seen, but it is not at all supported by evidence. There is no change in the range of motion of the child, no change in spasticity. So you can directly avoid giving passive manual stretching. It is of no use. If we talk of gross motor skills, treadmill training is a good complementary aid for a child who is ambulant. It will improve great endurance and walking speed. But again, spatiotemporal parameters, cadence and step length have not been improved. So we can say that treadmill training improves performance, that is endurance, without changing the biomechanical pattern of walking. And we can always use complementary approaches. These are very hooking for the patient. Patient comes to us. Right, so you can use virtual reality, you can use non-invasive brain stimulation, action observation therapy. These are all tools which can be used as complementary mechanisms, but not as standalone. The wise integration is we should always use a high dose, task specific, goal oriented training for the child. Critical synthesis. Now, this is a circle which I very fondly teach to my first year postgrad students, that whenever we plan movement, there are three things which are very important. First is the individual himself. Individual does the movement. He understands the environment. He plans the actions for movement. So this is the individual's role. The next is task. Movement depends on task, right? The task can be static, it can be dynamic, it can be discrete, it can be continuous, and all the different modes of the task have different implications on movement. And the third and the most crucial part is environment. Environment has multiple factors which are facilitators, which are barriers. So whenever we design any movement, any activity for the child, we need to have all these three factors in our mind: the individual, his impairments, his functional levels, the task and the demand of the task, and the environment and its different factors. So now we can see the context shift, right? High effective therapies are not just fixed on the impairment of the person कि इतना spasticity है तो पहले spasticity कम करो, ये करो, वो करो. But now it has shift on the task and environment. We try to modify the task. We try to break down the task into different parts. We try to modify the environment. In task oriented training, suppose if we are teaching the child sit to stand. Suppose if the child is not able to sit, we'll gradually increase the height of the surface. If the child is not able to walk on a foam surface, we'll try to make it rigid first, we'll try to make it firm first. Right? So we try to manipulate the task and environment for improving the performance of the child. And sometimes changing the environment is the quickest way of changing the functional output. So that is one thing that we need to focus on. Second, as we said, dose is very important. So we need to advocate that the patient and the family should incorporate and should regularly practice home exercise protocols, because as we said, 14 to 24 hours minimum practice is essential for changing of any motor skill. So we need to train the family. And this thing I highlighted, I like this. The role of the therapist is evolving and should evolve from rather a passive person who is just doing exercises for the child to an active advocator training the family how to actually do home exercise protocols. So the future of rehab is intensive, it is active, it is behavioral, and it is time sensitive. What are the future directions and research gaps? So, standardization of dose. As we said, there is an urgent need to decide intensity and duration. As we already said, the grade says this evidence is low to very low level. So, we need more research to be done to establish what is the intensity and duration of this task oriented active therapy. Second, all the literature that we have for now focuses on short term follow ups. We need more longitudinal follow ups to understand how the intensity, dosimetry, and which therapy shows longer sustained benefits for the child, and technology integration, how we can make rehab cost efficient for the child, for the family, how we can incorporate AI, telerehab, and VR approaches for improving the you can say compliance of the child to therapy as well as cost effectiveness. In a country like India, this is very crucial. So, on the few final slides, talking about the core interpretation of this systematic review, the first is that high dose task specific training like CIMT, by manual therapy, treadmill training are much superior as compared to conventional low dose approaches. Second is these approaches are important because they promote motor learning and use dependent neuroplasticity. So that is why use the intensity should be established, the dosimetry should be sufficiently provided. The strength of this systematic review is that it has done a wonderful synthesis of the best literature of systematic reviews and CPGs available. It gives us a strong conclusion. It gives us a clear focus on the dosimetry, the intensity, the principles of rehabilitation. The limitation of this review can be said that there was a high heterogeneity in the protocols, right? There was a reliance on short term follow up. So these are something which are the research gaps which can be fulfilled by upcoming studies in the same field. The take home message: dose is destiny. Clinical efficacy hinges on achieving the required intensity, minimally 14 to 25 hours, maximally 30 to 40 hours, for sufficient neuroplastic change to occur, right? Low dose therapy is inefficient. Second, behavior triumphs physiology. Focus on activity limitations and participation restriction, not on impairments. The 7 year deadline, we've seen GMFCS and max level establish the ceiling effect, right? So developmental ceiling occurs at 7 years. So before that, you can try to promote skill acquisition for the child, and after 7 to 8 years, we can try to maintain whatever the child is having in the motor skill level. Embrace the family. They are having an equal role in rehab and goal setting. So embrace that. Be a coach, not just a therapist. Guide them. Shift the focus from doing therapies to designing the most effective therapeutic protocols. So that is about me on the systematic review. And I'd like to end with this quote that CP is not a tragedy, but ignorance from our sides is. So let us become more thoughtful of what we do and implement the best evidence based rehabilitation strategies. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ansela. Once you shared this paper to me, I was so fascinated because after seeing this paper, it was one of the groundbreaking paper in cerebral palsy for sure.
True. So I've been
Because
practicing
the,
CP, and what I see is people are doing anything recklessly on the name of TOT and neuro approaches.
the sad part is so many parents are suffering. The quality of care is very down poor, particularly in developing countries. It's a very sad part. And this paper really shows that how important it is within 7 years of rehabilitation. That's very important, and holistic approach. So many important things are there in this paper. So participants, it's over to you. You can have some questions of yours with Dr. Hansala. Even you can post your questions to our chat box also. Any questions from the participant side?
Even I think if you don't have questions, you can add anything about the session or the initiative as a whole if
Yeah.
you want to.
Yes. Anyone? I think with pediatrics, we have to practice a lot. There are so many specialized physiotherapists coming across with sports physiotherapy, orthopedics, even in neurology. I see so many of people fascinated. I think this area is very important to be explored along with neurology, I believe, Hansala.
Yes, and I think skill is one thing, but when we are with children, we have to be very empathetic. We need to be very
Correct,
understanding and very participative, playful for them. So
correct,
that is, I think, one very crucial aspect of pediatric rehabilitation. How well we can engage the child actively.
correct. That's very important. That's very important. Any questions from the participant side? You can even post it on the chat box.
I think
Hello, Dr. Hansela.
yes. Hello, ma'am.
Hello, I'm Dr. Bhumi Avaya, pediatric physiotherapist. Actually, I wanted to say that if you can present any NDT-based treatment practical session, so we can learn some new techniques to how to handle the CP patients and dystonic patients. So it is very crucial, as you said, that we need to consider every approaches from patient side, from parent side, environmental. So sometimes we confuse that which approaches we should apply, so that we can gain what recoveries we want. Uh, so that's why, if it is possible for you to present some practical approaches, what that we can use in pediatric for CP child, dystonic child,
Sure, Dr.
or
Bhumi.
also
Yes, please.
or also for some spectrum disorder patient like autism, ADHD, which should we can do, so we can make them less hyper, or we can make them concentrate in surroundings like.
Yes, Dr. Bhumi, thank you. It was a wonderful question. I'll address the first part first, that is about the different approaches in CP rehabilitation. I actually am a very staunch believer of task oriented training, and the evidence is also follow task oriented training, right? As you said, NDT is followed, and there have been multiple modifications in NDT, and evidence is also medium quality, low quality evidences are supporting it. But again, I'd like to tell that evidences and even this systematic review has said that task oriented training is much better than any other approach to CP. So,
Okay.
with that being said, I think task oriented approach wins. But as you said, we'll definitely take into account that someday, Dr. Alagappan sir will try to, weigh in all the approaches in neuro and when to provide what.
For sure. As Dr. Bhumi said, we have to do one on autism because it is also on a huge rise.
Yes.
We'll
Yes,
do one
because it
autism
is
and ADHD one day.
very
Autism,
vast subject
autism
in today's
actually,
society, because
every child in autism I see I think is a source of learning for me, because for every child I specifically design new protocols. Sometimes I'm holding a brush asking them to paint. Sometimes I have the entire room dark and I have colorful lights in my hand throwing balls over here. So yes, I have tried multiple strategies for autism and across different age groups. I'm very thankful and proud to say that me and my team has found wonderful results. So for sure someday we'll have a webinar or something on autism where we'll talk on more of the practical aspects. We'll definitely take that into account, Dr. Bhumi. Thank you.
yes,
We will try
thank you,
to do
sir,
a
and
paper,
ma'am.
Ansala. On that
Sure,
also, we will
sure,
try to do a paper with our
sure.
specific approach. We will try to do.
Sure. Soon, madam. Soon we'll inform you.
Thank you, and the way you are presenting these seminars, short seminars, are really useful, and we learn many things which sometimes we forgot to learn. So thank you very much for
Thank you,
presenting
ma'am.
these
Thank you, ma'am.
seminars, and also.
If you found this insightful, I'll really request you that please share our handle with people so that many people can, enjoy the same level of knowledge that you think is beneficial. That's the actual aim of
Yes, yes,
all of our initiative. So thank you.
yeah, thank you. And ma'am, if it is possible, can you adjust time, like rather than 11 o'clock morning, you can shift it in afternoon time?
Afternoon time? Yes, we'll definitely look into it.
Yes.
Okay, we'll
Just
definitely.
because Sunday we are open, our clinic is open, so we hardly find some time. We have to manage many things.
Sure,
So
ma'am.
if it is
We'll look
possible,
into it. What do you say, sir?
thank you.
We will put a survey, Ansala. Next time, we will put
Yeah.
a survey and we will work it on for the participants' timing for sure. We'll do on that, madam.
Thank you.
Any
Thank
other
you.
questions? Any other participants? Okay. To conclude this session, I would like to say you all one important thing. Please spread this usual, very important initiative from us to your known people. We provide you good quality webinars. We provide you good quality journal clubs. We always give you standard quality things for sure. That's our promise from our side. And we also want to do it not on a regular basis, but we will do consistently. That's what our aim for a longer time. Myself and Dr. Hansal are saying that we want to do it for a long, consistent time. So please do support us, guys. So I thank you everyone for attending this wonderful journal club today, where you can see a rehab dialogue. You can connect our rehab dialogue with Instagram. We have just started with Instagram. We try to work more on YouTube in upcoming days, and you can also follow us in our WhatsApp community. Over to you, Dr. Ansala.
So I think you concluded it very well. So really, I really thank all of you to be with us today on this Sunday morning, and despite all of your busy schedules. Again, if there's still any question, any topic that you'd like for us to discuss, have any upcoming webinars, practical sessions, anything, you're free to post us directly. You can post us on our WhatsApp group, and we'll definitely try our best to include all those topics in future, because see, we are also exploring, and your feedback is the most crucial thing which will help us direct our goals accordingly. So rehab dialogue is not just an initiative of me and Dr. Alagappan sir. I think it's for all of us and for the field of rehabilitation. So we ask for your support. That's, I think, it from my side.
All right, Ansala. With this, I thank you for presenting this wonderful journal club.
Thank you, sir.
We will end the session now.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, on this Sunday. Thank you all.
Thank you. Have a good day. Have a great Sunday.